It's the Jim Fannin Show. We've come to take your mind.
Oh, am I still on? And here we go. Jim Fannin Show. The real Andy Lee Show is with me tonight. We're going to head fast and hard. I think we got about an hour. Welcome aboard. Buckle up. Okay, the producer usually is good enough to get the music down and get the Zoom window open. Okay. Andy Lee, I'm really glad to get to know you. I've been a short-time follower. By the way, you can't say you're canceled from Twitter if you're still on Twitter. You can't, quit leaning on that crutch already. Come on. Are you unmuted? You got to unmute for me. Sorry, I told you to mute, and then I forgot to give my guest the...
Well, I mean, you have to be a short-time follower because I was genuinely canceled from Twitter, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I had a good base that I built over 2 years, but unfortunately, I was canceled during, I was covering the Freedom Convoy, and unfortunately, I was suspended without reason. So, so you have to be a short-time follower if you're following me now because I just joined back up. So I definitely was canceled by Twitter. It's a bit of a mystery as to why they canceled me. Like I said, they never gave me any good reasons. So if you're listening to me tonight, probably you're all new listeners, and that's great. That's a very good thing. And I'm very, very grateful because Twitter's been actually very, very good to me since I've been back. I've reported numerous accounts for various reasons. I don't report... I'm not like, I'm always reporting accounts, but there have been some accounts that were, genuinely concerning that I've reported, and Twitter has taken them down. So, and obviously knowing and looking at me saying, well, we suspended this woman before, right? So we're going to side with her this time. So it's a little bit of a mystery, Twitter, and how it operates. It's very, very interesting. I love how, this acquisition of Twitter from Elon Musk is bringing all this out, and maybe showing us as to how our social media platforms are actually run. I look at bots and things like that. So I think that there's a lot of bot accounts, and there's a lot of accounts that were created specifically, and this is really interesting. I've been working with some researchers as to how many accounts. We're going to do a study on this. Actually, it's going to be really, really cool, I think, as to how many accounts were actually created during the protests in Ottawa, from mid-January till about, mid-April, and to see how many accounts were actually created and what these accounts said during this time period, when the protests were going on in Ottawa, and which side they were on, and try to find out where they actually originated from, and their networks. I think that's going to be a really, really cool study. So I'm really, really excited about it. So yeah, anyways, so this is me. Good to meet you, Jim. It's our first time. So, let's just get into it. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's interesting where your passions lie. You kind of, you gravitate towards the issues that you're passionate about, obviously. And when you feel like you have to stand up and say something, then you only have so many avenues to do it. So you're on terrestrial radio, correct?
I'm I'm just on Twitter, and then I do a show with Marc Patrone on Sauga 960 AM.
Okay, so you are
So
actually on a physical radio station in Canada.
yeah. So we've got a good, we've got a good probably million people that we can reach. So it's not a bad stretch. We try to do a show at least once a week on different issues. It doesn't really matter what the issue is, just common political events of the day or whatever. Yeah, and so I run my Twitter platform. I've got my own show that I'm trying to get ramped up. And of course we've got our YouTube channel, but I don't promote this stuff. I do this all for free, right? This is kind of more of it's a hobby slash passion slash obsession for me.
Yeah, I know.
So
Suffer the same. Okay, tell us a little bit about where you started. How did you get into it? Are is this, are you a personality of circumstance, or have you been in broadcasting for a long time? I mean, I've had several reiterations of the Jim Fannin Show. I had a couple radio shows, got fired from the last one for, making fun of a local festival. It was actually one of my best bits, my last bit on that station. And then similarly to you, I've had multiple accounts canceled. I had a pretty good Jim Fannin Show YouTube channel that I rode. It was a 10-year-old channel, and then I just decided I was going to blow it up. And I blew it up, and I blew it up to, 6,000 subs and 3 million views in a few months. And I was very strategic about it. And then I put COVID in one of my titles, and they disappeared the whole channel in the early days. I put a Don Cherry podcast up, and I put a coronavirus. Actually, it wasn't COVID back then. I put coronavirus in the title, and they just disappeared the channel and my income. It was about $1,500 a month for those 3 months, or a couple months. Anyways, yeah, my first check was $1,600. I'm like, oh, geez, you can make money on YouTube, and then it was just gone. So I've gone through. So I'm more interested in how you got to where you are and what you've done to get here, because I don't know that much about you, and I think most of my viewers and listeners won't know either. So I'm glad to hear the Andy Lee story from the beginning. I mean the beginning. Who are you?
It's not that interesting a story. So my mother, one of my mothers died. I've got two mothers. I'm blessed that way. So one of my mothers died during lockdowns, and I got really, really angry. And so I was lonely. So I took to Twitter, and I started fighting back on Twitter and social media and researching the federal government. And my family, my ex-husband, my children are Chinese. So I got really, really interested in sort of foreign influence in our government, corporate influence in our government. And so I sort of really focused on that. And I ended up being really, really good at it. And so Stephen Harper's former House leader, Jay Hill, took notice of me. He just said, I think that you have a real talent for politics. I had never done this before, anything like this before. So I was, I didn't know anything about politics, geopolitics, anything, any of this stuff. I didn't know anything about it. But he just said, you have a real affinity for it. Will you run for the federal election? So I ran for the federal election. It was a great experience. It really, really opened my eyes as to how politics are run in this country. I had a great team behind me. It was really, really amazing to see people who are really, really passionate about politics, not for any reason that is anything other than altruistic, right? It was really, really cool to, after examining how our politicians operate in our country, to see that people would rally behind, somebody who just genuinely wanted to do better, right? No ulterior motives or anything like that. So I was like, wow, there's still really good in our country. It was fascinating for me. And so then I briefly talked to Tamara Lich before the convoy. I was very, very concerned as to how these people were being portrayed in our media, and the verbiage being used. They were being painted as villains before they had even done anything, simply for protesting against our government. And I have a real issue with that. I think that that's an enshrouded right that all Canadians should feel that they are entitled to, and that they should be able to practice that. So I said that I would follow the convoy to Ottawa. So I followed them to Ottawa. I subsequently got deplatformed. Jordan Peterson had a huge fit when I was deplatformed. I also got debanked. My bank accounts were frozen as well while I was in Ottawa, unfortunately. But that's okay. I didn't let it get me down. I, regrouped, started over, and, started the Real Andy Lee show and said, you know what? So, I mean, this is, like I said, you don't have to be a career politician to do stuff like this, or a career media personality. And this is never what I intended to do. Like, I never thought I would be here talking with you, talking with Marc Patrone, talking with politicians, getting really good interviews, getting really good scoops, things like that. I never thought that I would do it. So anybody can do it if you have enough passion to do it, right? It's sort of like you have to just feel it and you have to go for it, right? And if I can do it, anybody can do it. There's nothing special about me whatsoever, right? I was just a single Canadian mom who was sick of lockdowns, right? And wanted to do something different. And I was like, can I make a difference in my country? And I like to think that, maybe I didn't make the biggest difference, but maybe I made some difference, and that's worth something, right? I feel like Canadians got really apathetic in our political system, in our rights and freedoms and things like that. We live in a very comfortable realm where, not much goes on in Canada. We're just sort of lounging in our own little realm here. Nothing really exciting goes on. And then all of a sudden we were put into like the center of scrutiny of the entire world for what we did, right? We rose up and protested against our government in an unprecedented way that was wild, that all of the world took note of, in protest of vaccine mandates, travel mandates, mandated mandatory boosters, right? Things like this. So, I mean, it was just sort of like this very, mostly, peaceful, quiet population all of a sudden rose up against all odds and stood up against their governments over lockdowns. It was very, very unexpected. And, so I felt like it, and I don't have to, here's the important thing about reporting. You don't have to agree with everything that people say to understand that they have a right to speak their minds. You don't have to agree with them. So even though I didn't agree with everything that the protesters did, I still had a deep respect that they had a right to speak their minds and to be heard, as long as their protest was legal and peaceful, which it was ruled to be by Superior Court, right? So it was like, I didn't need to, people are like, you're getting on board with this. I'm like, no, I'm not even an anti-vaxxer. I'm vaccinated, right? Like, I had no personal vested interest in any of these movements, right? But it just, I realized that, our media bias has become so extreme in our country that, the right side really needs more defenders. And I don't even really like doing this because I'd like to be reporting more moderately. That's my personal feeling. I'd like to report on not just being a right-wing reporter. I'd like to also, report on things. There are issues in the left side as well, right? So I don't just want to be like stuck in one side of that political spectrum. I don't really like that. I wish I could branch out more, but it just, right now I'm boxed in because I feel like our left-wing media bias is so extreme that I have to stand up for one side and help defend them. So anyways, that's like a little nutshell of how I came to be here. Like I said, it was nothing glamorous. It was not intended. I fell into it. I think a lot of people have fallen into it. That's the really cool thing about social media nowadays is, before, before we were able to network in these manners, you couldn't really be heard on platforms. We only had one news source or a couple of news sources. Whereas now, you know what, if you can use social media, you can go anywhere for your news sources, right? You're not boxed in. You can go to, you can go to Jim, you can go to me, you can go to other people, right? It doesn't matter where you go to. But I think the important thing is that, and this is what I have a big problem with our government with, is trying to rein this in, because we know that they don't like these alternative news sources. They're talking about, being able to sort of regulate what YouTube, things like that, put out there. This is what I don't like it, is that I feel like it's really important to our democracy that we've been given choice. I think that that's essential, is that we've been given choices. And that's super, super, super important. We're not boxed into listening to what's on our 6 o'clock news.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hear you when you say, the bias of the media. It never used to be that way. Like when we were younger, we grew up around the television, and CBC and CNN weren't like that. Now it's actually embarrassing for me to watch. I don't find myself there very often. I get attracted to like Fox News because they actually still have fun on their shows and they're entertaining. I mean, Gavin McInnes. Oh shit, we got to hit that topic. Tucker Carlson, as far as a broadcaster goes, is flawless. He mispronounced a word the other day, and I'm like, write it down. The guy made a mistake. I think, is the show live? I mean, either way, it's live to tape. They don't do any post-production on that show, I don't think. But, and they have fun, and I feel like I'm getting both sides of it. You just give me the news and let me decide. Like, don't, but I do appreciate the fun, and, it's been a long journey for me being a lefty for so long, but the left wasn't crazy when I was with the left. They weren't talking about 100 different genders and boys can become girls. Like, we're in some scary stuff. And so I'd like to ask you, what you find the root cause is. I guess anyone with children, I don't have them, would say, I do it for the kids. I do it for the kids. It's exactly like when I had Shandor over, he was the guy that scraped up the stickers at Shoppers Drug Mart as a parody on Defiance almost. You know what I mean? It was a really deep joke, and he got arrested. Whatever, he made a scene, filmed it, and then they arrested him for. We all got charged with breaking the lockdown, going to a protest and marching through the streets. One of the biggest celebrations of freedoms. I don't think St. Catharines, my little hometown of 140,000 people, actually had 2,000 or 3,000 people take to the streets, and the cops were cool. They shut down the streets, and they knew where we were going. I didn't march, but I took the mic. I was the lead MC, and I didn't talk very long, not even 2 minutes, and yeah, I had a charge for April 10th and April 17th, and April 10th and 17th, yeah, and they took Shandor to jail. Anyways, I don't know where I'm going with this now, or I was talking about Shandor. Anyways, with the media coverage, I'm wandering all over the place here. It just seems so biased now, and it didn't ever used to be that way, and it's hard to look at these accounts. And, through this whole pandemic, that's where we're going to, the underlying commitment. Oh, yeah, I know. Shandor brought his kid. I met his kid at the driveway after we did the interview, and he was 1. And he said, Jimmy, after this mask mandate's done, my kid will be, I think maybe he was 8 months old. I don't know. My kid will be like a year old, and he will not have seen a stranger's face in public. And that, for me, was it. That it was game on at that point. And I've always been political. I've always kind of had a show and been controversial enough. I love mocking and calling names and all the things that, I know I shouldn't do. It's funny. I'm fucking hilarious. There's no two ways about it. So shut up. If you don't like it, then whatever. But yeah, when he told me that, and then, we're not going to see for decades the effect on our children. About the lockdowns, about the masking, about the loss of the school years. And that wasn't COVID that did that. That was not coronavirus that ruined our children. Because if we did nothing, we couldn't have changed the numbers at all. Like, I'm convinced everything we did, and I said it from the beginning, nothing of what you're doing is going to contain this. You cannot, this is why we went to all this work and shut down economies and mandated vaccines and masks. The masking of the children is absolutely bar none my biggest issue with it all, because I think it's most detrimental. And we have decades to see the results of that mask experiment, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I wonder what your underlying commitment is. Was there a point in time when you snapped, or was like something happened? I know I mentioned, I saw some of your writing. You're speaking about, losing your mom over the pandemic and how that went down. What's your underlying commitment, and what kind of turned the switch for you to go, oh, it's all wrong?
Yeah, I mean, losing my mom was part of it. So I lost her really early on in the pandemic. That was in April 2020. That was when lockdowns had just started. We were told not to travel. She unfortunately died, and I wasn't able to visit her. So that was part of it. That got me on Twitter. It got me on social media. It got me reporting. It got me investigating. It got me networking. And actually, probably one of my my huge red pill moments was when I started looking at China. I started looking at the things that the WHO had put out. They were contradicted by China's own health authorities. So I was very, very concerned. And then, of course, we had our own health authorities. We had Patty Hadju, we had Teresa Tam parroting this. Like, I found one tweet that went back, and it was the WHO, and there was there's no clear evidence of human to human transmission. But that very same day, the Wuhan public health authorities had put out that there was evidence of human to human transmission. And of course, this was during when, the point when Justin Trudeau was campaigning for a UN Security Council seat, right? He was when all this went down, he was campaigning for a UN security seat,
right? Which he lost.
So I was sort of like, are you just ignoring all of this, this overwhelming information, and sort of playing the game because, you don't want to upset anybody who could, potentially, vote against you for your UN Security Council seat. So that was sort of my red pill moment. And then, yeah, I met up with some other people. Michael Sanger, fantastic author, attorney, suing Twitter right now. He was banned as well, wrote a great book. I think that my red pill moment was really, though, when I think it came independently, and it was after I was vaccinated, but I still wasn't allowed freedom of movement. And other places were still locked down. I was like, wow. Okay, so we're all vaccinated, but we're also locked down. I can remember going to my kids' school for events, and I was double vaccinated. I would still have to mask. Jeez. I would still have to show my QR code.
Oh my God.
To get into the school.
Wow.
This is an elementary school. So I would have to show my QR code, even though I'm double vaccinated. I would have to mask, and then the kids would all still be masked and 6 feet apart, sitting in hula hoops.
Man,
and I was like,
this is gross, man.
Hold on here. You said that this is my ticket to freedom, right? So when does normal start?
Wow.
Right? If normal doesn't start now, then when's it starting? And do you guys have any intention of starting normal?
Shapiro said the same thing. I took 2 shots. It's over. It's done. I'm free to go now.